On the morning of February 22, 2024, Laken Riley laced up her running shoes and stepped outside, expecting nothing more than another routine jog. The 22-year-old nursing student had done this countless times before. This time, she would never make it back. Just before 9 a.m., Riley texted her mother, Allison Phillips, letting her know she was about to head out for a run. Minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., she placed a call to her mom. It went unanswered. 8 minutes after that, Riley dialed 911. The call was sudden, disturbing, and it didn't last. The emergency call cut off abruptly. When dispatchers tried calling back, once, then again, there was no response. As the morning dragged on, unease settled in. Riley's family tried reaching her phone over and over. No answer. Her roommates, growing increasingly alarmed, realized she should have been back by now. By noon, with no sign of her anywhere along her usual route, they contacted police and reported her missing. What followed was a frantic search across the University of Georgia campus. Less than an hour later, a campus police officer made a grim discovery. About 65 feet off the running trail, in a wooded area behind a lake, Laken Riley's body was found. Authorities said she was unconscious, not breathing, and had visible injuries. She was pronounced dead at the scene. News of the killing sent shockwaves through the campus and beyond. Riley was not a stranger wandering unfamiliar ground. She was a young woman in her prime, a future nurse, someone deeply loved, doing something ordinary in broad daylight. She was like an angel, her father would later say, so full of life. But by midday, hope had vanished. What began as a simple jog had turned into a homicide investigation, one that would soon spark national outrage, courtroom drama, and a political firestorm. And the question everyone wanted answered was simple but terrifying. Who took Laken Riley's life, and how did it happen in plain sight? Investigators quickly began piecing together Laken Riley's final movements, relying heavily on digital footprints she never knew would become evidence. Her phone data showed a quiet morning routine, texts, a call to her mother, music playing through her earbuds as she ran. Nothing suggested she knew she was in danger. But someone was nearby. Surveillance footage, trail cameras, and witness statements soon pointed authorities toward a man who had no connection to the university or to Riley herself. His name was Jose Ibarra. Ibarra had entered the United States unlawfully in 2022 after migrating from Venezuela. According to court records and reporting, he was apprehended by Border Patrol after crossing the southern border, but was later released with temporary permission to remain in the country. Like thousands of others, he faded into the system. By 2023, Ibarra was living in the U.S. full-time. He initially stayed in New York City with his wife and mother-in-law at a hotel converted into a migrant shelter. Months later, in September 2023, he relocated to Athens, Georgia, after his brother told him there were better job opportunities there. What followed were repeated encounters with law enforcement. That same month, Ibarra was arrested in New York for riding a motorized scooter without a license, with a child on board who was not wearing a helmet. He was released. Weeks later, in October 2023, police in Athens arrested him again, this time in connection with a shoplifting case. Once again, he walked free. By February 2024, Ibarra was living less than a mile from where Laken Riley would take her final steps. As investigators retraced Riley's route on the morning of her disappearance, they began uncovering chilling clues. A jacket discarded in a dumpster near an apartment complex caught their attention. Security and ring camera footage showed a man throwing it away just after 9:40 a.m., barely an hour after Riley's final phone call. When police recovered the jacket, the evidence was devastating. It contained blood belonging to both Riley and Ibarra. Strands of Riley's hair were also found on the fabric. Soon after, one of Ibarra's roommates identified him as the man seen on camera disposing of the jacket. When officers questioned Ibarra, they noticed scratches along his arms, bruising on his hands, and abrasions across his knuckles. He had no explanation. Investigators believed the injuries were defensive, marks left behind as Riley fought for her life. DNA testing would later confirm it. Jose Ibarra's DNA was found under Laken Riley's fingernails. By then, the case had shifted from a missing persons search to a murder investigation, with a suspect who, prosecutors would later argue, saw Riley as a target of opportunity. Jose Ibarra was arrested on February 23, 2024, just one day after Laken Riley's body was found. By then, investigators believed they had a clear timeline, physical evidence, and forensic proof tying him to the killing. Prosecutors laid out a disturbing theory. This was not a planned attack, but a sudden act of violence. According to police, Ibarra encountered Riley during her morning jog and seized the opportunity. What followed, they argued, was a brutal struggle that ended with Riley suffering fatal blunt force trauma to the head. Authorities charged Ibarra with a long list of crimes, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated battery, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, kidnapping, hindering a 911 call, and concealing the death of another. The inclusion of the 911 charge stemmed from prosecutors' belief that Riley's emergency call was interrupted during the attack. "I think this was a crime of opportunity," a senior law enforcement official said at the time. "He saw an individual, and bad things happened." In May 2024, Ibarra entered a plea of not guilty. What surprised many was his next move. He waived his right to a jury trial. Instead, the case would be decided by a judge alone in a bench trial held at the Athens-Clarke County Superior Court. The trial began on November 15, 2024, and prosecutors wasted no time painting a chilling picture of Riley's final minutes, her sudden 911 call, the violent struggle suggested by her injuries, and the physical evidence left behind. The defense pushed back, arguing that the case relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence and questioning whether the timeline truly proved Ibarra's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But the evidence told a different story. The jacket, the DNA under Riley's fingernails, the unexplained scratches on Ibarra's body, the surveillance footage placing him near the scene and disposing of incriminating clothing. After days of testimony, the decision came swiftly. On November 20, 2024, Judge Patrick Haggard found Jose Ibarra guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read aloud, the courtroom fell silent. Then Riley's mother stood to speak, face to face with the man convicted of killing her daughter. "Jose took no pity on my scared, panicked, and struggling child. She was attacked, beaten, and shown no mercy." For the Riley family, the conviction brought justice, but not peace. And outside the courtroom, the case was far from over, because Laken Riley's death was about to reshape a national political conversation. Laken Riley's death did not end with a guilty verdict. Instead, it became a flashpoint in a national debate, one that stretched far beyond the courtroom and into the heart of American immigration policy. Because Jose Ibarra had entered the United States unlawfully and had prior encounters with law enforcement before the killing, politicians quickly seized on the case. Within weeks, Riley's name was being invoked on Capitol Hill, on cable news, and even in the 2024 campaign trail. During the March 7, 2024 State of the Union address, then-President Joe Biden referenced Riley while speaking about border security. In a moment that stunned viewers, Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene interrupted the speech by shouting, "Say her name." Biden responded by calling Riley an innocent woman and offered condolences to her family. But the political momentum didn't stop there. Throughout the 2024 presidential campaign, Donald Trump repeatedly cited Riley's death as evidence of what he described as failures in border enforcement. Her story became a cornerstone of his push for stricter immigration laws, referenced in rallies, debates, and even his speech accepting the Republican presidential nomination. In January 2025, shortly after returning to the White House, Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act, the first bill of his second administration. The law mandates federal detention of undocumented immigrants accused of theft or violent crimes and gives state attorneys general the power to sue the federal government for damages caused by failures to enforce immigration laws. Supporters hailed the legislation as long overdue reform. Critics, however, accused the administration of exploiting a young woman's death to advance a political agenda. Some pointed to federal studies suggesting undocumented immigrants are arrested at lower rates than native-born citizens for violent crimes. Even within Riley's own family, emotions were complicated. Her mother publicly thanked Trump for promising to never forget her daughter, but her father, Jason Riley, expressed discomfort with how Laken's name was being used. He said in an interview, "It makes me angry. She was much better than that. She should be raised up for the person that she is, not turned into a political symbol." For the Riley family, Laken was not a talking point. She was a daughter, a student, a future nurse who went out for a jog and never came home. Her killer is now serving life in prison. But Laken Riley's legacy, woven into law, politics, and national memory, continues to shape conversations about safety, immigration, and justice in America.